Welcome to Pandemic, ladies and gentlemen. Are we having fun yet, boys and girls? I most certainly am, I must say. Pandemic is a multi-billion-dollar business. Coffee is for closers, and I've got a piece of it, and that's not just hyperbole. There is an ancient Chinese curse that you might live in interesting times, and surely we have. And the Mandarin character for crisis is a unique marriage, perhaps queer, of two Mandarin characters. Do we remember what they are? Danger and opportunity. But opposites, at least in science, do attract, and they stand to remind us, boys and girls, that wherever there is danger, there is always opportunity, and fortune always favors the bold. So be bold like a winner or cower in fear, as either is your choice in a natural selection and determinism. And in a global pandemic, you just gotta ask yourself, do you feel lucky? You are still alive in a pandemic that has claimed the lives of over 900,000 Americans, leading the world in global public health crisis that to date, post a victory by the Rams over the Bengals in a Super Bowl game on Sunday, has claimed the lives of exactly 5,810,880 victims worldwide as of February 14, 2022 at 6:32 p.m. or 18:32 hours for our fully vaccinated military friends, Central European Time. According to the World Health Organization, maybe you are lucky, but even Harvard professor of astrophysics Richard Feynman can tell you that in Las Vegas, Sin City, the real gamblers don't rely on just dumb luck and serendipity, but make their luck. And if you are just getting by on a feeling of being lucky, with your little feelings, what does that tell you, my lucky friend? With your rabbit's foot horoscope. You are ultimately a loser, just getting by in a pandemic on dumb luck. Capacity for reason be damned in a scientific phenomenon in which a single strand of RNA has become your damn master, and even Dr. Rochelle Walensky has stated that this virus isn't stupid. While human behavior in this pandemic hasn't served you very well. So the good or bad news is that as of today you're fired. But you have a chance today again to redeem yourselves and recoup your losses, boys and girls, because you have been chosen as a product management team to develop a solution for a pandemic pathogen that has infected 77,592,982 Americans, and it has been attributed to the deaths of 916,977 as of 8 p.m. 2000 hours Eastern Standard Time on February 14, 2022, St. Valentine's Day. According to the CDC COVID-19 data tracker, most of whom have been the elderly in nursing homes, over 75%, even after the delivery of efficacious, not effective vaccines approved by the FDA, a known high fatality risk age cohort from the beginning, the very beginning. But today there is a new product, and apparently the new push by Pfizer and Moderna to gain approval for vaccinations of children below the age of 5 has been put on a 2-month delay. Perhaps in recognition of the very fact that worldwide, according to UNICEF, there have been only 23,000 fatalities amongst children under the age of 19, only 910 in America and only 13 in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Do the math. But in your news today, perhaps you have been diverted from pandemic about a tantalizing story about the former president, Donald J. Trump, involving what appears to be a total of 15 boxes containing classified information for which an sudden urgency had arisen at the White House to have immediately returned. In another intriguing story, as reported by The Atlantic, suggesting that our next pandemic may well not find its origins in the zoonotic source that was permitted to escape at the beginning of the pandemic, a thought that had only recently occurred last September to Christian G. Anderson, the author of the most often cited zoonotic evolution report. The Chinese curse of interesting times, with 15 boxes of classified information suddenly noticed missing at the White House after over a year, and now prognostications of doom from The Atlantic that the next pandemic may not be zoonotically evolved, from the source that we let it get away, but rather find its origins in a biological attack. How exciting. So for the next few moments, let's see if we might be able to examine both of these news stories under the lens and perspective of a case presently on petition for the certiorari of the Supreme Court, a case that just so happens to be mine. Not to boast. As I said at the very beginning, pandemic is a multi-billion-dollar business, and I truly possess a huge piece of it. And when you have your own case, your very own case, that you are arguing by yourself without a damned attorney at the highest court in the land, even an attorney will attest that you are not just merely engaging in idle boasting. So first, as an observation, it is most intriguing that on St. Valentine's Day, in a matter that has found not even one mention in the press, in either echo chamber, liberal or conservative, the White House had a deadline toll for a response to the Chief Justice John Roberts' presumptive assertion of executive privilege, a matter we've discussed in previous videos, after failing to respond to a simple yes or no response in a FOIA request. So on all evidence, the president has broken the law, albeit FOIA law, which is not in and of itself criminal. Even if unlawful, there is a distinction, and a civil controversy in the courts. Civil, criminal. Civil, criminal. Criminal, you go to jail. Civil, you may pay a fine or damages. This is comparable to suggestions that the former president, Donald J. Trump, has broken the law by retaining documents under the Presidential Records Act. But had the press done their homework, or have you done your homework to check the press to make sure they were not lying to you, viewing facts in the most reasonable light and not presuming that they had intended to be deceptive in any way, just sloppy, they would recognize immediately that if the code section in the United States Code for the Presidential Records Act began with anything other than 18 U.S.C., it is more likely than not a civil provision and not a part of the Federal Criminal Code, like 18 U.S.C. 1961 for racketeering, 18 U.S.C. 201 for bribery, and the President 18 U.S.C. Section 248 for the PACE Act, 18 U.S.C. Section 241 for conspiracy to violate civil rights. There are several of them. And the Presidential Records Act, 18 U.S.C. Section 2332 Bravo for transnational terror. And the Presidential Records Act is codified at 44 U.S.C. Section 2201 to 2207. Hence, presumptively, not a criminal provision. And if you take more time to further read on inside those sections, you would plainly see that there are no criminal provisions. Nothing says you will be sentenced to this much time in prison or death. And this enactment of Congress expressly provides a former president with an opportunity for a day in court. Imagine that. Presumption of innocence. A day in court under due process and equal protection to assert a rationale for retention of records beyond the end of his term in the White House. So if you are raptured in partisan passion after the football game on Sunday, or simply confused regarding exactly how the law works, then perhaps you should have done your damn homework and been rational rather than emotional. You might want to delete that tweet so you don't look stupid on Facebook or Twitter. And Twitter D, Twitter dumb. And since it is the month in which we observe Black history, it may be important at this juncture to note that in 1933, a total of 24 states just suddenly responded to evolutionary pressure to convert what had been in the common law handed down from England, very old England, a simple civil matter in tort defined as trespass, which you may have heard of, to add to the criminal code in response to the evangelizing and proselytizing efforts of the Jehovah's Witnesses. We didn't want them knocking on our doors anymore, so we decided we were going to throw them in jail. But also to curb off an inchoate and growing civil rights movement, which is why when you witness scenes of integration of lunch counters, you see pictures of protesters engaged in civil disobedience being taken away to jail for trespass, because what had been a civil matter had suddenly been defined under the criminal law as criminal. Yes, we took away your right to protest, any criminal. And you might say that that was a long time ago when there was Jim Crow and lynching and the KKK, but things are very different now. But if you just look back to the first impeachment of Donald Trump, the inquiry proceeded forward under a claim brought under the Congressional Budgetary Empowerment and Control Act of 1974, which also is a civil provision with specific civil remedies in mandamus to compel the release of funds, and nothing criminal at all, but raised to the level of a high crime and misdemeanor in a politically charged trial of impeachment, as people permitted their emotions to get the better of them. But just remember that under the law, what is now criminal for that person subjected to punishment could just as easily become criminal against you, and the law might change just as fast if you are unpopular. And it's very interesting that the Republicans in Congress have made that argument, even though they were attorneys. Just a thought to consider, boys and girls, while you observe Black History Month, Black Power. And as we had referenced in the last video, what you may or may not know about classified information is that a former president actually retained his personnel security clearance. And under Executive Order 12958, the president is the ultimate security classification authority. So that means that he would possess a top secret clearance when he leaves the White House, like the records that were discovered, and that the simple possession of top secret documents by a former president is not of itself an indication of criminal conduct. And if you thought otherwise, on all empirical evidence, we can state that you were ignorant, and aren't we glad? So why on earth or in hell would the White House suddenly notice that a total of 15 boxes of classified information were missing after holding the White House for over a year? That's a lot of boxes to go missing and not notice. Should have done an inventory. Found out the first day we have 15 boxes of classified information that are missing. That would sound like mishandling classified information in itself at the White House by the current president, which would not be good if you are the commander-in-chief. And why might a former president find a necessity to retain certain classified documents beyond his term in the White House? And on many videos we've discussed, U.S. v. Bailey and the defense of necessity. When you have the defense of necessity, you have the defense of necessity when there are no other legal means, and at which time you are permitted a small infraction of the law, or like a simple law that you broke to prevent a larger harm. U.S. v. Bailey. Justice Marshall abstained. But going on, certainly, when framing the Presidential Records Act of 1978, a post-Watergate enactment, the Congress had anticipated that there might be some set of circumstances, undefined specifically, like the executive privilege in the Constitution, as we reminded in U.S. v. Nixon, where a former president, on assertion of a constitutional right, may find some necessity, defense of necessity, to retain certain documents that may or may not be classified information. Well, if we have been watching this special Valentine's Day edition of Pandemic Apprentice, what do we know that probably nobody else does, boys and girls, because it has not been pressed? We know that in the matter of Webb v. Fauci, record number 21-6868, which you can actually find online on your computer, the White House had a deadline told for response to the Chief Justice on a presumptive matter of executive privilege to explain exactly why, since March 23, 2021, they had refused to provide a response to a FOIA request. And like the story that just appeared in The Atlantic, it had raised the specter that not the next pandemic, but the present one, may have had some tangential connection, at least to dual-use research of concern performed by the Defense Department, for which there was deemed a necessity by some government officials to classify standard metrics of infectious dose and secondary attack rate for COVID-19, as indeed there was. And in 2015, a record in the open source regarding a SARS-like coronavirus that had not only been cultivated in vitro, but also in vivo. And we know that Dr. Fauci was very, very concerned about that. In his email to his deputy on February 1st, a Saturday of 2020. And we know, if we have been following this series, that if these metrics were in fact classified information, then under Executive Order 12958, then the biological causative agent for COVID-19 would of necessity have to be the property of the United States government, and hence would have been finding its origins in a laboratory. Kind of like that sounds like coronavirus that was discussed in that little science report in the open source that was transmitted by Dr. Fauci. Contrary to persistent claims by Dr. Anthony Fauci, the president's top medical advisor, and the former president's top medical advisor, who has claimed that it was zoonotically evolved. Hence, Dr. Fauci lied. So, since everyone is anxious to play prosecutor in the press and on social media rather than acting like Pastor Hemmings Jacobson in the infamous smallpox vaccine case in 1905, along with attorneys for defendant in error, it might be a good idea to actually have the law to review before speculating about matters outside our areas of expertise before we go on like his attorneys for defendant in error, who argued the ridiculous, ludicrous claim of derogated rights under the preamble. And under the time decision rule articulated in Reed v. Merit Systems Protection Board, decided in the year 2007 by the Federal Circuit in D.C., if an adverse action occurs, something bad to you, within a reasonable time from a protected activity, like a person engaged in their due process and equal protection rights in a court of law, the complainant need not demonstrate the existence of a retaliatory motive to establish the protected activity was a contributing factor. We call this burden shifting in the courts. And there is sufficient evidence, certainly for moi, with a case before the United States Supreme Court, to assert that these 15 boxes of classified information may or not have some connection to my case, which may or may not present an adverse action as to myself and my legal rights, derogation of my legal rights. And as stated in Schnell, the Department of Army, decided by the Merit Systems Protection Board in 2010, once the knowledge timing test has been met, an administrative judge must find the appellant has shown that the protected activity was a contributing factor, even if after a complete analysis of all of the evidence, a reasonable fact finder could not conclude that the appellant's protected activity was a contributing factor. So it appears that under the law, not just my opinion, but a judge's opinion, we can establish sufficient standing for an in-camera review by the court to ensure that these documents that have been seized by the White House, just as the deadline was tolling in our case against the White House, were not an attempt to spoliate or conceal evidence, which is actually a felony. Bad breaking the law. Very exciting indeed. Fortune favors the bold, as I said, and peradventure you may too get the chance to return to your exciting life as well after your pandemic. But for now, I can certainly say that I have a petition docketed for certiorari, before the Supreme Court in a pandemic in which the White House, and I'm not even a lawyer, in which the White House has not only asserted a presumptive claim of executive privilege, an argument you only have in law school moot court, but as of today has even failed to provide a reply to the Chief Justice, which is a truly historic event, or pretty F-bomb big deal, as the president would say. And in a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, goody two-shoes for me. And a God in heaven, on all evidence, simply does not like you. But perhaps your team won the Super Bowl. And if not, there is always another Super Bowl next year. You're fired.
Of businesses fail, give a less than 5% chance of getting COVID-19. Are you a loser or are you a winner? This briefing is unclassified, as you were. honest as you were.
My friend, unless your daddy happens to own the railroad, we're going to enjoy a very brief. Hey, sugar, where's my coffee? Still here? I told you, fine. Go away.
This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.
You're fired.